All right, so get this. We're diving into some really weird squirrel stuff today.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of squirrel candy?
No, I can't say I have.
Sounds a little Willy Wonka-ish, right?
Okay. Well,
But
wait.
no, this is a real thing.
Really?
Yeah, and it's way more interesting than it sounds.
I'm intrigued.
So basically, we're going to uncover this kind of strange world of gray squirrels.
Okay.
And they have this thing for eating tree bark.
Tree bark.
Yeah, tree bark.
Interesting.
Going all the way back to 1923 for this one.
Oh.
There's this research article by Theo H. Sheffer.
Okay.
He was an assistant biologist with the U.S. Department of Agriculture.
Oh, wow.
And he had some pretty crazy observations about gray squirrel behavior.
Like what?
Well, he was looking at squirrels in western Washington,
Okay.
and specifically how they were debarking trees.
Debarking? What do you mean?
Basically, they were stripping the bark right off.
Huh.
And we're not talking about just like a little nibble here and there.
No.
It was like entire sections of bark gone, especially from pine and fir trees.
Wow. That's pretty intense.
Yeah, and get this, it wasn't just saplings either.
No.
He even found damage on trees that were a foot in diameter.
A foot?
Yeah, can you imagine what that must look like?
I'm trying to picture it.
Like the ground just covered in bark strips.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
That sounds like a mess.
And all with teeth marks on them, too.
Wow. So they were really going at it, huh?
Like a squirrel demolition derby out there.
That's one way to put it, I guess.
But it makes you wonder, right? Why would squirrels do that?
Yeah, I mean, don't they usually eat nuts and seeds and things like that?
Exactly.
Why go to all that trouble to eat bark?
Well, Sheffer had a theory.
What was it?
He thought maybe their usual food source, acorns, wasn't so reliable in that area.
Okay, that makes sense.
So maybe they were just desperate, you know.
Yeah, if you're hungry, you got to find something to eat.
Right. It's like a hunger-driven adaptation.
I could see that.
And apparently tree bark was their best option.
Wow, so like survival food for squirrels?
Pretty much. And get this, the locals actually had a nickname for it.
Oh, really?
They called it squirrel candy.
Squirrel candy.
I know, right? Makes the whole thing even weirder.
Yeah, it does.
But hold on, this is where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
So Sheffer had also seen similar debarking before.
Where?
It was with Abert squirrels in Arizona.
Interesting.
And they actually ate the bark.
Huh, so not just peeled it off.
Nope, they straight up ate it.
That's different.
Yeah, and that's a key difference, actually.
How so?
Well, the behavior in Washington was way more widespread
I see.
and way more damaging.
Why mean?
Well, they weren't just peeling the bark, they were girdling the trees.
Girdling.
Yeah, it means they were removing the bark in a ring all the way around the trunk.
Oh, wow.
And when that happens, the tree can't transport nutrients properly.
So it basically kills the tree.
Pretty much. Yeah.
That's a lot of dead trees, then.
It was basically a graveyard of trees. All thanks to these squirrels and their taste for candy.
Wow.
Sheffer even described the landscape as eerie.
Really?
All these bare white trunks just standing there.
Like skeletons.
Exactly. Must have been a strange sight.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
And get this. This wasn't happening deep in the forest.
No.
It was out in open prairie areas
Huh.
where there were just scattered oaks and pines.
Okay.
Makes you wonder if the habitat had something to do with it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's why they were going after the bark in the first place.
Right, like maybe there weren't enough other food sources around.
Exactly.
But here's the thing, this whole bark-eating behavior was kind of new.
At the time.
Yeah, it was a recent phenomenon.
So what did people think?
Well, a lot of folks thought the squirrels must be new to the area.
Like they were an introduced species.
Exactly. But Sheffer actually traced their lineage.
Oh.
And guess what?
What?
They had been there all along.
So they weren't new to the area.
Nope, they've been living there for a while.
But suddenly they decided to start eating bark.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
What could have caused that?
It's a real mystery.
It is.
They were there the whole time, but then bam, they developed a taste for tree bark.
Like they woke up one day and said, forget acorns, we're going for wood.
Exactly. It's wild.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
It does.
Like, what else is going on out there that we don't even know about?
Right. What other strange behaviors are animals getting up to?
Exactly.
It's a whole world of mysteries out there just waiting to be uncovered.
I can't wait to see what we find next.
Me neither.
Well, Sheffer had some other ideas, too, about why the squirrels might have started eating all that bark.
Oh, really? Besides just being hungry. I mean,
Yeah, like maybe something happened to their regular food sources.
like what? Something besides just a shortage of acorns.
Right, like what if the nutritional quality of their food had changed? Or maybe the types of trees that produced those foods were becoming less common?
It's kind of like if your favorite pizza place suddenly started using cardboard for the crust.
Okay, yeah, I get it.
You might start looking for other options even if you weren't totally starving.
That's a good analogy.
Right.
But wouldn't the squirrels have noticed those changes gradually?
That's a good point.
Why would they suddenly switch to eating bark like that?
Well, maybe the change wasn't as sudden as it seemed.
Hmm.
Like maybe this bark-eating behavior was always around.
Really?
Yeah, just in a small number of squirrels.
So like a hidden talent?
Yeah, something like that.
A talent for destruction, you mean?
Well, yeah, in this case.
But I guess if only a few squirrels were doing it, it wouldn't be that noticeable.
Exactly.
It's only when it spreads to the whole population that it becomes a problem.
Right, and maybe those bark-eating squirrels were actually doing better.
Like maybe they were finding more food or something?
Could be, and then the others started copying them.
So it's like a squirrel fad that got out of control.
That's a good way to put it.
And the trees are paying the price.
Yeah, unfortunately.
It's kind of crazy how a small change in behavior can have such a big impact,
It really is.
especially when you have a whole bunch of squirrels doing it.
Exactly. And remember, this was all happening in an area with very few predators.
Oh, right. You mentioned that earlier.
These squirrels were living in the Tacoma Game Sanctuary and the Cascade National Forest Reserve.
So they were basically living in a squirrel paradise.
Pretty much, yeah.
No predators to worry about. Free to indulge in their newfound love of bark.
Sounds pretty nice, right? Wait a minute. Are you saying that the lack of predators actually contributed to this?
It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
I mean, I guess it makes sense.
We know that predators are important for keeping ecosystems in balance.
Right. They keep the prey populations in check.
Exactly. So maybe in this case, without any predators around.
The squirrel population just exploded.
Could be. And with more squirrels around.
Even a weird behavior like bark eating could become a big problem.
It's like a chain reaction.
I see what you're saying. So yeah, maybe the lack of predators played a role.
But couldn't there be other factors too?
Of course.
Like maybe something changed in the forest itself.
Like what?
I don't know. Maybe the bark became more appealing to the squirrels for some reason.
That's possible.
Maybe the trees themselves changed or something.
Yeah, we can't rule that out.
It's just too bad Sheffer didn't really look into those things.
I know, right?
His research was mostly about the behavior itself.
It's true, but that's how science works sometimes.
Yeah.
You answer one question and it just leads to more questions.
Exactly.
It's all about digging deeper and exploring further.
So what does all this mean for us?
You mean the non-bark eating public?
Yeah. Like, what's the takeaway message here?
Well, for one thing, it reminds us that nature is full of surprises.
That's for sure.
Animals are constantly adapting to changes in their environment.
And sometimes those adaptations can have some pretty weird consequences.
Yeah, sometimes they're even destructive.
So it's not just about squirrels and trees, right?
No, it's about how everything is connected.
Like a web.
Exactly the choices that one species makes
Even something as simple as what they eat.
can have a ripple effect on the whole ecosystem.
And that can impact plants and animals and even the landscape itself.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is.
And it shows how important it is to study animal behavior.
Yeah, not just because it's interesting,
But because it helps us understand how everything works together.
but we can keep things in balance.
Exactly.
Who knew that squirrel candy could be so insightful?
It's true. Sometimes the smallest things can teach us the biggest lessons.
I think that's a great place to wrap things up.
Sounds good to me.
You know, it's kind of funny to think that what a squirrel eats could tell us so much about the health of a forest.
Yeah, it's like they're trying to tell us something.
Like, hey, pay attention. Things are changing here.
Exactly. Those bark-eating squirrels, they could be a sign of bigger changes happening.
So it's not just about saving the trees from those little bark lovers. It's about realizing that they might be trying to tell us something important.
Yeah, about the world around us. I mean,
Okay, so what are they trying to say?
well, their actions could be telling us about changes in their food supply,
Okay.
or maybe predator populations are changing,
I see.
or even the overall health of the whole forest.
Okay. I'm following you.
Think of it like this. What if you suddenly started craving spinach all the time?
Spinach?
Yeah, your friends would probably think something was up right.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like maybe you weren't feeling well or something.
Right. Or maybe you needed more iron.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that with the squirrels.
Instead of spinach, they're craving tree bark.
Pretty much, yeah.
So they're reacting to something in their environment.
That's the idea.
Wow, that's a pretty big message coming from a bunch of little tree chompers.
It is, isn't it?
Makes you realize that even the smallest creatures can have a big impact.
Absolutely.
And that their actions can tell us a lot about what's going on around them.
Exactly. So it's important to pay attention to the little things.
Right. Even something like a squirrel's diet.
Because it might be a clue to a much bigger story.
It's all connected.
That's right.
So to our listeners out there,
Yes.
next time you're out in nature, really take a look around.
Yeah, be observant.
You never know what you might learn.
You might see a bird building a nest with something weird.
Or a squirrel eating something besides acorns.
You just never know.
And those little things can tell you a lot.
About the environment, about how everything's connected.
It's all a delicate balance.
That's right.
Well, this has been a really interesting deep dive.
It has, hasn't it?
Who knew squirrel cuisine could be so fascinating?
And so insightful.
So thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of squirrel behavior.
It's been fun.
And remember, next time you see a squirrel running up a tree,
Don't just assume it's after nuts.
it might have a taste for something a little woodier.
You got it.
Until next time, stay curious.